Hello and welcome back. We are still in day 4. In this video, you'll understand how to do iterative processing using Foreach scope and also parallel Foreach. You'll clearly understand the differences between parallel Foreach and Foreach. In interviews, actually, this is a common question. What is the difference between Foreach and parallel Foreach? I have explained you with a very good example. You'll see it practically. So let us continue. Let us talk about for each. As you might be knowing, for each can be used for iterative processing. So if you're expecting huge number of records to be processed iteratively, then we can use for each. But for each will actually do sequential processing. All the records will be processed sequentially. If you want to do iterative processing, but still you want parallel processing, then you might be knowing in Mule, we have parallel for each. Let us see an example of both iterative processing using for each, parallel for each, and we will see the scenarios, how to take a decisions, which one to go, in what scenario to go for what. So I'll tell you with an example. uh, so here I have an example using for each. Assume that I'll be getting a lot of products. I want to add all the products to a database. I'll be getting products from a CSV file. This is the CSV. Assume that these all are the products. There are 100 products. From 101 means first line is actually containing the header. So there are 100 products. And for now, product ID, actually, I want to ignore so that it will be automatically generated. Okay. So I want the product ID to be automatically generated. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop the product and create it again, product table. See, here I want the product ID to be automatically incremented. Right now, I'm just executing this so that the product table will be dropped and recreated. Now, product ID will be automatically incremented. Okay. So let us see now. I have a lot of products. In this case, I'm ignoring the product ID. So while inserting, I will not insert the product ID. The product ID will be automatically generated. Now, see in this for each, I'm actually configuring on new or update file to poll for input directory. Once it gets the file, I have configured auto delete to true. So the file will be deleted once the file is entirely read and processed. Now this transform message component is actually converting the data, whatever is read, into a list actually, list or an array. If I just write payload, it will give me the list. So I'm setting a variable called as products, which is an empty array. So what I want to do is, I want to iterate for each product and in the product, I want to add some extra fields. Actually, right now, if you see only brand, name, and price are there. But in the table, along with brand name, we have some description, offer price, offer valid until original price. There are extra columns in the database table, but in CSV, we have only few. Okay. Now for each record, I want to add some extra fields. And then finally, I want to insert into database. So one way is in the Foreach, I could use insert component to insert each record into database. But this is not efficient because if there are 100 rows or 1000 rows, 1000 inserts will go to database. No, not a good idea. Now what I want to do is, I want to do a bulk insert of all the products. So see here what I'm doing. I'm using for each with batch size as 1. So for each record, this will be executed. Logger is just logging the payload. And this transform message is adding extra fields to the payload, like offer valid until. I'm adding a date component just like that. Offer price, I'm actually making multiply by 7.75 and price. So I'm adding some extra fields for each element, right? And then see what? See here, I created a variable called as products, which is an empty array. Then this transform message is configured to set a variable product, same thing. But for the existing products, adding the transformed payload. So after this for each, this variable products will contain array of all the transformed ones. Then I'm using bulk insert to actually insert all the products at once to database. So basically here by using for each, I'm processing each item iteratively in a loop. So this is sequential processing, right? So let me just run this application. Okay, deployed. Now, this on new component is pulling for files in input directory. I will copy this products.csv and paste it inside C drive files input. So it will be automatically picked up and see, oh, duplicate entry 6. Okay, I got an exception. Actually, in Foreach, I have iterated. And finally, when I'm trying to do a bulk insert, getting duplicate entry 6. How come? Just let me check this bulk insert. Okay. Actually, in the product table, products with ID up to 1 to 6 are added. After that, product ID is duplicated is same. The thing is, I configured this product table we have product ID, which will be automatically incremented. So while doing the insert, I don't need to pass the product ID. So it will be automatically incremented. So what I will do is right now, I will truncate the data. So in product table, there is no data right now. I guess it got redeployed as well. Now I'll copy the same CSV file into input folder. Yes, I guess now there is no exception. Now there's no exception. And you can see in the log processor, it is printing the array. This logger, what I did, I'm configuring it to print array. Whatever products are there in this variable, initially this product is empty. After the loop, it should have all the transformed products. So on the console, do you see it is printed for each product? See, extra properties are added like offer, valid until, offer price, original price, all are added. And finally, one bulk insert is done onto database. Let us see. Yep, here you can see 100 records are added. But we have done iterative processing using Foreach. Now, I want you to observe that a single thread actually in the logs, if you observe, this is the thread name, Uber 04. Single thread has processed all these records, sequential iteration. Now let us see how we can use parallel for each. So here is a parallel for each. Same logic. Okay. Same logic. Here I am pulling from a folder called as input parallel directory. Transform message is converting it. Set variable, this is an empty array initially. And here, instead of for each, this is parallel for each, where inside this for each element, I'm adding extra information to the payload. Adding, okay, just to actually introduce a failure scenario. If the payload is, if the brand is HP, actually in the CSV, there's a field called as brand. There are multiple brands, HP, Asus, Apple, Samsung, etc. So just to simulate an error, if payload.brand is equals to HP, I'm just throwing an error. Else, I'm adding the payload to this one. For now, for one scenario, let us comment out this part. Only I'm adding the payload to the array. Okay. Then in the logger, here, I'm printing the modified or transformed payload. And after parallel for each, I'm logging wars.products. So parallel for each, what it will do? It will iterate through each record, but multiple threads will parallelly iterate. You can control what is the maximum concurrency by configuring here. How many threads will process at maximum? 10 threads. Right. Now, here, for each record, I want to introduce a delay of 1 second. Let us see. I will introduce a delay of 1 second. DW : runtime : wait. Here, first argument will be returned, comma, the duration, I'll give 1 second. So 1 second in delay I am introducing for each. Okay. So, and here I have configured max concurrency as 10. Let us see now what will happen. But before I run, tell me, what will be the payload after Foreach, parallel Foreach? Here I am logging the payload. Will it be the modified payload?
No, the original payload.
Sorry?
The original payload before parallel.
Yes. Whatever was the payload before this Foreach scope, that will be the original payload. What about the variables? Here I am modifying the variable inside parallel Foreach. So do you think this variable contains the modifications?
Yes.
No. The variables will not be having the products. Okay. So let us see. I will just run this. I'll stop and start again. Let us wait until it starts. Let us see. I'll put my file inside a directory called as input parallel in C drive files. In my C drive files, under input parallel, here I am putting it. So it will be picked up. Let us see the console. Yes. You can see a lot of logs actually. These logs are from different threads over 10, 12, 4, 6 and all. So you can see that the logic inside for each is executed by multiple threads parallelly. This is the logger which is printing the payload after a delay of 1 second. So the threads are parallelly processing all the records. Okay, let me go down.
It should be around 100 records, right?
Yes, 100. And now this log here is printing an empty array. Actually, this is the vars. Even though in the for each, I am adding the variable, I'm adding the payload to the variable. It is not affected. So inside parallel for each, if you are modifying the payload or if you are modifying the variable, that modified variables and modified payload will not be available after the for each. Only the logic will be executed parallelly, right? And sorry, one more thing. Here, one small thing I want to tell you. Inside for each, whenever I was using for each, after for each, what will be the payload? Is it the original payload? Yes. Yes. A small difference I will tell you. When you are using Foreach, the payload will be the original payload. Payload after Foreach will be the original payload. But variables, whatever variable we are adding into the Mule message, those variables are accessible outside of Foreach. But in parallel Foreach, it is reverse. Actually, the variables, whatever we modify inside parallel Foreach, will not be accessible outside. But what is the payload? Let us see the payload. Here, the payload is the array of the original payloads. See, this is the Mule message. This is the Mule message, which contains attributes and body. Attributes, payload, inbound attachments, all this. This is actually the Mule message of first payload, first element in the list. This is another Mule message. Basically, I will be getting array of payload will be an array. Input to parallel Foreach will be an array. Output payload will be an array of not payloads, array of messages. Array of Mule messages. This is one Mule message which contains attributes, payload, etc. Whatever other parameters inside the message. So that is the difference between parallel Foreach and Foreach. You'll be able to process the records parallelly, but payload will be modified. Variables will not be present. So that is the difference between parallel Foreach and Foreach. Okay. So that's about the next thing. Iterative processing using parallel Foreach.